Imagine waking up and seeing this headline everywhere: missiles flying across the Middle East, air defense systems lighting up the night sky, and two of the region's most powerful rivals suddenly on the brink of full war. This is the story of the Iran and Israel conflict, a rivalry that has been building for decades and now threatens to pull the entire world into a much bigger crisis. But to understand what's happening today, we need to go back to the beginning. What many people don't realize is that Iran and Israel were not always enemies. In fact, decades ago they had quiet cooperation. In the 1960s and 1970s, Iran was ruled by a monarchy that maintained ties with Western countries and had a relatively normal relationship with Israel. But everything changed in 1979 when a revolution transformed Iran's government and its foreign policy. The new leadership strongly opposed both the United States and Israel, and from that moment, the relationship between the two countries turned hostile. Over time, their rivalry became one of the most intense geopolitical conflicts in the Middle East. For years, however, they didn't fight each other directly. Instead, a shadow war began. This included cyber attacks, intelligence operations, sabotage, and conflicts through proxy groups in the region. Israel carried out secret missions targeting Iranian military infrastructure and nuclear programs, while Iran supported groups across the Middle East that opposed Israel. This invisible conflict continued for decades, mostly out of the public spotlight, but tensions kept rising. Then the situation started to change. In recent years, the shadow war began moving into the open. Strikes and counterstrikes increased, and both sides became more aggressive. When major incidents started happening openly, the world realized the rivalry was entering a new phase. Military technology like drones, ballistic missiles, and advanced defense systems became central to the confrontation. Suddenly, what had been a quiet conflict behind the scenes was becoming something far more dangerous. One of the biggest fears driving the conflict is Iran's nuclear program. Israel has long believed that if Iran develops nuclear weapons, it would dramatically shift the balance of power in the region and threaten Israel's security. Because of this, Israel has repeatedly signaled that it is willing to take military action to stop that from happening. Iran, on the other hand, argues that its nuclear activities are for national security and development. This disagreement has been one of the most serious sources of tension between the two countries and has also involved the United States and other global powers. As tensions continued rising, the conflict reached a new level when direct attacks started taking place between the two countries. Missiles, drones, and military operations moved from secret missions to visible confrontations. When these attacks happened, air defense systems were activated, cities prepared for emergencies, and millions of people followed the news in real time. For many observers, this moment felt like the beginning of a new chapter in Middle Eastern geopolitics. The reason this conflict matters so much goes beyond just two countries fighting each other. The Middle East plays a critical role in global energy supplies, international trade routes, and regional alliances. When tensions rise between major powers in the region, the effects can spread far beyond the battlefield. Oil markets react, global politics shift, and governments around the world begin preparing for different scenarios. The United States is especially important in this situation. For decades, the U.S. has been one of Israel's strongest allies and provides military and political support. At the same time, relations between the United States and Iran have been tense for many years. Because of these relationships, any major conflict between Iran and Israel can quickly involve other countries and increase the risk of a larger regional war. Another factor making this conflict complicated is the network of alliances across the Middle East. Different countries support different sides, and many groups operate within the region that can influence how the conflict develops. This means that even a single strike or retaliation can trigger reactions in multiple places at once. That's why analysts often describe this situation as one of the most dangerous flashpoints in global politics. Despite the tension, there are still moments when diplomacy becomes possible. International organizations, world leaders, and negotiators often attempt to reduce tensions and prevent escalation. Sometimes these efforts slow things down, but the underlying rivalry between Iran and Israel remains unresolved. Both countries continue strengthening their defenses, building alliances, and preparing for future scenarios. Today, the conflict between Iran and Israel represents more than just a military standoff. It reflects decades of political rivalry, security concerns, and competing visions for the future of the region. Every new development is closely watched by governments, analysts, and millions of people around the world. What happens next is uncertain. Some experts believe the conflict could escalate into a larger regional confrontation if tensions continue rising. Others think that international pressure and diplomacy could prevent the worst outcomes. But one thing is clear: the relationship between Iran and Israel will continue shaping global politics for years to come. And as events unfold, the world is watching closely, because what happens in this conflict could influence not only the Middle East but the balance of power across the entire world.